episode of the Monday Morning Learning Podcast. This is a special episode on a book written by Nigel Hughes and Rick on Trees of Paradise. Now, before I say a word, Nigel, any welcome words? I also want to introduce Rick and yourself.
Okay, so hello, Nigel Hughes, my partner, Ric Edelman. His name is different on the book because he went back to his Jewish family name about 20 years ago.
Right.
And we wrote this book together over 30 years ago, but we've just republished it as an ebook. So I'd be more than delighted if you could get online and purchase a copy. Commercial over.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So quick introduction to Ric Edelman, aka Rick Edmonds, before discovering his Jewish roots, as Nigel just said. Rick studied biological sciences at the King's College London. Then, as written in the book, shocked his professors by running off the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School. I guess that's where Nigel met him. Subsequently turned from acting to writing and had a lot of success on Radio 4 and London Fringe. In the 1980s, Rick also worked with a young single homeless as a resettlement officer at Alone in London. And again, returned to rainforest protection, devising eco-dramas with indigenous actors in Papua New Guinea, where he and Nigel toured by dugout canoe, playing to rainforest villagers that had no concept of industrial logging. This led to the protection of 2,000 square miles of primary forest, home to the legendary birds of paradise. That's all about Rick. Now, Nigel Hughes studied fine art at the Exeter College of Art before changing course and training as an actor at the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, where he met Rick. He spent 20 years, as he says, as a triple threat, professional actor, singer, dancer combined, and his favorite roles are Paul McCartney and John, Paul, George, Ringo and Bert, and Jimmy Porter and Look Back in Anger. Since using his theater skills, he's become a leadership and creative business consultant for over 30 years with Menardi Associates. He was also a multi-award winning CEO of two NGOs, Northern Lights Trust, working with people living with the challenge of HIV and AIDS, and Green Light Trust. Now, Rick and Nigel together founded Green Light Trust back in 1989 with the aim of ongoing partnership with the PNG, rainforest people, and motivating communities in the UK to take environmental action. Now, 6 years ago, as the book says, they handed over the trust to a new team. And I think that allowed Rick to return to his full-time writing. And back in 2019, Nigel formed a startup company, Outstanding Global, which is heading as of now. It also supports the arts with his inaugural project, Cheetah, with screenplay written by Rick. So let me end by saying Bedlam Films Production LLP are now on board to produce Cheetah, with Outstanding Global providing the initial development fund. So that's about the intro. Nigel, let's also look at 5 themes for this podcast. We're looking at the same themes as in the book. So we'll start with the severe head of a toucan. That's theme 1. We'll look at Trees of Paradise. And Big Pillar Trek Long Home. We're going to ask more about that as theme 3. Rainforest 4 being the theme 4, and Lessons from a Rainforest being theme 5. So Nigel, the first theme, the first question to you is, how did the idea arise of visiting rainforests, and how difficult was it to reach your destination?
The idea came from the fact that Rick and I are both very much passionate about nature and global nature, and we've both been travelers around the world. But there was a particular headline and a newspaper article back in 1986, long before many of your listeners and viewers, I'm sure, were born, which just absolutely pinged my heart. And it was about the destruction of primary rainforests, particularly in Brazil, which of course still goes on to today. But having pricked my heart and pricked our minds, we then decided that we would actually go in search of primary rainforest that was healthy and well, not under the logger's knife. So we started doing some research, and we researched many places. And of course, there was one place that came to mind, and that was Borneo, where they still had primary rainforest. And in our research, we worked with forestry consultants in the UK and globally. And we landed on the fact that we would go to Borneo and specifically to East Kalimantan, which is the Mahakam River that goes way up into the wild forest. So November 22nd, 1987, we took off on our journey in order to explore and find primary rainforest that was still intact. And as we talk in the book, it wasn't a very easy journey.
Right.
In fact, I ended up being very ill. We almost were, we were hijacked at gunpoint and at knife point, and also we were marooned up the Mahakam River.
Yes, thanks for that, Nigel. Great initiation for this podcast now. I think somewhere in the middle, I saw that Ric was actually trying to use your angel cards. So can you share more insights? And are you still using those angel cards?
Yes, in fact, angel cards. Now, angel cards need a bit of explanation.
Yeah.
Angel cards are sitting in this little box here.
All right.
They are small cards.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like here.
And they have, on one side, every card has an angel.
Yeah.
And on the other side, they have a quality or a word. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see light. Yeah.
And then here's another one.
Gratitude. Yeah.
Gratitude. Okay. So, because of both of us kind of exploring our inner selves, I went up to Findhorn, which is a spiritual community in Scotland. And they had started something called the Game of Transformation, or the Game of Life. And two wonderful women actually created the Game of Life. And as a way to help you go from one step to the next in order to complete your transformation, you choose a particular angel to help you on your journey. And you can do it, you can actually choose it actively, or what we tend to do is choose them blind. So when Ric was particularly in a very difficult situation, because I was hospitalized in Australia, he had to first of all go off to Papua New Guinea on his own. And he thought, well, actually, he needed some help and support. So he sat down with the angel cards, and actually, much to his surprise, he found the angel of humor.
Right, great. Okay.
So the angel of humor really helped him on his initial journey when he was in Papua New Guinea on his own for the first time.
Thank you for that. Right, I'm going through the story again. One of the parts where both of you actually get marooned at the heartland of Kalimantan. Is it that Kalimantan? Did I pronounce it right?
Kalimantan, yeah.
Kalimantan, yeah. So how did that happen?
Oh, well, as I said, we had a very difficult journey in Borneo.
Mm-hmm.
We were helped by a lot of people, and we were pointed in the right direction. And we went on a wonderful trip on a ferry boat all the way up the Mahakam River.
Right.
And much to our surprise, there was a young captain called Supri, and he was only about 17 years old, and both his parents were on the ferry. And we started talking to them about what our search was.
Mm-hmm.
And they were able to give us contact with the Dayak tribe up the Mahakam River. Now, the Dayak tribe are very remote forest dwellers, and they're famous for wearing earrings, but the earrings actually extend the lobes of their ears. So that actually they come and they put all sorts of things in those lobes. So that's one of the things. But we were taken by Bapa Ding, who was one of the chiefs of the Dayak tribe, and we were passed from family member to family member as we went further and further up the Mahakam River until we actually got there. We got into the Mahakam area, and suddenly there was a big storm. Yep. And we were prevented from going any further up the river. So we ended up being marooned for 6 days while the storm abated. And we were taken care of by these families. I was still rather not well, but there was one particular man who was a medic, and he actually, I think, saved my life because I had a roaring temperature, but we got there. We were marooned for 6 days up the Mahakam River and taken great care of by the Dayak tribe people.
Thanks for that. So moving on to the theme to team, Trees of Paradise. You write in the book that it was a supreme privilege to get close-up glimpse of the Trees of Paradise. Can you describe that to us?
Oh, okay. So having had a miserable failure finally in Borneo, and we'd, by that time we'd run out of time, we'd run out of money, so we had to come back to the UK. So we came back to the UK in order to work again and replenish our funds so that we could go off. So the next year we were actually doing our research, and everybody said to us, okay, well, if you really, really want primary rainforest, then we know there's primary rainforest, but the best primary rainforest just happens to be up in Papua New Guinea. I said, my initial reaction was, where is Papua New Guinea? And then we discovered, of course, Papua New Guinea is on the top of Australia. So we set off, and we set off with our mission to actually go into the primary rainforest of Papua New Guinea. The first person who really assisted us, because of our theatre connections, was the director of the National Theatre Company in Port Moresby, which is the capital of Papua New Guinea. And William Takaku, once we'd arrived in Port Moresby, he said he would welcome us. And the idea was for us to exchange writing, acting, theatre skills. So that was our first intention. So he met us off the plane, and then he took us into his heart and his home, introduced us to his professional theatre company, and we began to do some work there. But we said, look, William, actually what we're here for is to go and explore. And he said, what do you want to find? And we said, we want to find the ancient, thriving rainforest. And he said, I know exactly where you need to go. And in fact, my theatre company is about to go on a patrol right up into the East Sepik. So why don't you come with us? We did. And just to answer directly your question, what was it like to see the trees of paradise? Well, of course, when you see trees that host the birds of paradise, remarkable birds that can transform their shapes, sounds, colors in a second, to actually stand under the ancient trees of paradise is the most, I think, breathtaking experience, because they're huge. It takes about 10 people holding their hands together to go around one of these ancient trees. And they go on and they go up and they go up and they go up for about 30, 35, 40 meters, some of the emergence.
Wow.
So to actually stand under these ancient trees that have been there for 2,000-3,000 years is absolutely a joy to behold. And of course, what's up in the trees are the birds of paradise.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you for describing that, Nigel. And was it after coming back again to base where you delivered the workshop on mastery at the National Theatre of PNG?
Yes. So our first exploration, once we'd actually got to one of the remote villages, and we were working with the National Theatre Company, we also met another theatre company, much more local in the East Sepik, called the Raunisi Company. And actually what we did, when we were traveling through looking for this primary rainforest, every rainforest we found was owned by a different tribe and a clan chief. So actually, the play that we created in their own traditional style was performed by these traditional actors.
Mhm.
And then at the end of the play, we would have a discussion. So the discussion was about these forests are magnificent. Of course, when you're hunter-gatherers and have been so for many, many years, this is what you have.
Yeah.
You don't know any different. So part of the drama was the outsiders coming in with their chainsaws, cutting down trees. So we were delivering the message that you have to take care of what it is that you have, even though you don't quite know what it is,
So,
because somebody might come along. And one of the things that was really important was that they said to us, well, now that we understand these forests are precious, we need to find a way to get the message back to the forestry people at the national government. And
right.
there was the link, because William Takaku knew the people in the national government. He then made an introduction for us. And as part of that is that we did a performance of the Raunisi play called Thank You for Tomorrow.
Right.
And then we had a workshop with the government people. And the thing that's unique about these government people, particularly the forestry men, of course, were only one generation away from being forest dwellers. So once we started talking about their forest and the fact that we'd been to one of the most remote areas and walked for 6 days across a mountain, which white people had never done before,
Yeah.
of course, we got the badge of admiration, if you like. So we found a way to talk ourselves into their hearts.
Mhm.
And then once they knew what our story was, they actually really began to help us look at the challenges and helping us solve the problems.
Okay, lovely. I think it is hearing you, listening to you, Nigel. I mean, we've heard a lot of stories of people who protect the environment, and it's very unique with you and Rick actually going to the ground, understanding the people, and the element of the mastery workshop, which is so relevant. It's customized, personalized to their particular environment. And as they did the drama, I'm pretty sure they would have actually got the message which you're trying to tell them. So really love the way you explained it. And I think moving on, we're looking at green light productions. How did it come into existence? And the more essential question of, did it fulfill your aim of linking art and nature?
Oh, Greenlight Productions, how did it come into being? Okay, well, having explored, discovered, found the primary rainforest that was under threat and the beginnings of the way to help solve that problem, then of course we had to find a way to send the message out to the wider public.
Yeah.
And because both of us in the past had actually experienced a number of red lights, you know, difficult moments in your life, you come to the red traffic light and you kind of go, oh, how are we going to overcome this obstacle or do this or do that? So actually what we decided was we would create something called Green Light Productions. So it was a double message: green for go, but also green for nature, green for environment. And what we did was then we created 3 environmental dramas that were actually produced in the London West End Theatre. One of the key dramas was about the rainforest destruction. And of course, that brought us in a lot of support globally from people like Friends of the Earth, global organizations, forestry people around the world. They began to hear about the message. So that was really about how do we as humankind really respect the fact that we are part of nature. We're not separate. Nature and human nature, of course, are interlinked. So if we want to respect ourselves, we start by respecting that connection between nature and human nature. And the 3 productions were very, very successful. We gathered a whole group of supporters. And then at that point, there was a moment where still the primary rainforest conservation was the key thing to do. So we decided to put all our hearts and souls and efforts in making sure that that primary rainforest was our number one focus of attention. And through those 3 productions, we really found a way to help people understand, particularly the young people.
And was one of the restoration committee that you worked on, the Emperor of the Moon? How was directing it? Was it at the same time?
Oh yes, so interesting. Yes, suddenly, because of the work that I was doing and working with some students, then there was a very good friend of mine who was working at another drama school, and I'd done a very successful production of an all-female cast play. Funnily enough, but a man should direct a play that's all about a female cast. But that was so successful, and so my friend said, "Oh, actually, would you like to direct another play? Because there's a restoration play, which is a period play, an old comedy." And so I said, "Okay, I've never done this restoration play before, but let's give it a go." And what I discovered was, I'm afraid, that I got rather unstuck, because there was something about the way that we were looking at this production, and there just wasn't quite the right link between myself, the material. We couldn't quite form the way that we wanted to form as a theatre group within the drama school. So I'm afraid I became a bit of a cropper. But of course, it's always this thing about whenever you make a mistake, then you stop, you breathe, you look, you listen, you try to unpick what it is that you've done wrong, and then begin to make sense so that you don't make the same mistakes the next time. And so that was also a part of my learning, because of course, as a performer, as a theatre director, as an environmentalist, as a passionate nature lover, you're always having to learn, and learn.
Thank you. Moving on to the theme for Rainforest 4. And after driving cars in the UK and hopping onto airplanes across the world, how was your experience riding or journeying on a canoe throughout your forest expedition at Papua New Guinea?
Okay, yeah, from trucks, cars, walking, airplanes, as you say, hopping from one place to the next, and then going into a dugout canoe. Now, the dugout canoes are the main transport in the East Sepik area. You can only get from one community to the next by going up the mighty Sepik River. And traditionally, of course, the dugout canoes would be paddle canoes. And the dugout canoes are probably about 25 to 30 meters long. They are long canoes, so they're quite heavy. And they're made from a single trunk of one of these magnificent trees. So they fell the tree and they literally dig out the inside. So when we were going on this journey, suddenly we were in a wooden boat. Fortunately, we had good support, and we had a crew that were paddling us up the river through some of the rapids. And the biggest thing about the dugout canoe, of course, you don't have an umbrella. So you're at the mercy of the sun, the wind, the rain. And as you know, in Papua New Guinea, tropical rainforest, it can rain quite a lot. But the most annoying thing is the mosquitoes, or as they call them, gnats. And we just happened to be transversing the Sepik River at high mosquito season. So whenever the boat stopped, suddenly they call it the Sepik dance. You're forever. So I'm afraid that was one of the biggest things. And of course, these are malaria-bearing mosquitoes. Yes. So sadly, Ric and I both suffered several times from malaria. But But of course, there are very good times on the dugout canoe. And, you know, when the weather is good, when it's not quite so hot, and the paddle and you're going down, oh, it's bliss. But there are dangers. So it's a pro and it's a con.
Thank you. Now, in trying to conserve forests and felling of trees for the big MNCs, how was your experience dealing with the government officials at PNG?
I think, as I alluded to earlier, because of the way that we'd found to get into the hearts of the tribal people, then of course one of the things that we did, Bubby, was that we didn't go out as missionaries. We went out as curious individuals, and actually sometimes our 3 local guides referred to us as their lick pickaninny, their little children.
Right.
We were grown men, but of course we were completely into the unknown. We had no idea about the culture, about the habits, about how we should take care of ourselves. So we were literally putting ourselves into the arms of these men. And so we found a way to really establish a fantastic trust. And we were always asking questions. And that's the thing for us, is that we asked questions constantly. And us, because we needed to know the answers for ourselves, but also by us asking the questions and being curious, is of course they then began to realize that what they got was something unique, something special. And so when they said, okay, we now understand that we have this forest and it's special, but we also understand there might be some people that want to take it away from us. We can't all go down river because we have our lives to live here, but you're going back, and we need to ask you to ask the questions for us. So we said, okay, now of course we can ask questions on our own behalf, but you're asking us to do something quite special here. So what we need is some level of permission so that we can be asking questions on your behalf. So there was a short letter that was written by one person that we were traveling with who did have a knowledge of English, because all the time we were speaking in what we call Tok Place, different languages. There are over 600 different languages in Papua New Guinea. So we were learning 1 or 2 words of 1 or 2 of the different languages. But we did know how to find a way to communicate, because as performers and writers, that's exactly what we do. So we said, okay, we need proof that you have asked us. So a short letter was written, and we said, well, it's all very well, but you know, this could be written by anybody. We need your signature. Of course, these people do not read or do not write. So the letter was written, it was read out, and then one by one, 3 of the tribal chiefs, one of us held a pen. The tribal chiefs put their hand on the top of the pen and we scribbled a sort of a name. Yeah. And that was the way that they were giving us their permission. Yeah. So when we went into the forestry people and the government people with this letter and us telling our stories and saying some of the words in Tok Pisin, and also some of the unique languages, they absolutely then, these government people knew that we'd done the journey. And that gave us a lot of respect. And therefore, it was about mutual respect and understanding. And because, of course, at that time, the East Sepik area was under the threat of the biggest industrial logging operation at that time. We had to do a lot of convincing and a lot of talking to the government officials who would actually find a way to make a lot of money out of this, to make sure that actually primary rainforest is the most precious thing that you need in your country. Fortunately, they listened to us and we succeeded. And the good news is that primary rainforest is still standing to this day, 32 years later.
Great to hear that. Great to hear that. So with all of these lessons that you have learned over there, and I think once you come back to UK, how did you bring the rainforest to the school? How successful was the storytelling tour, and what was the reaction from the school students?
Ah, good question. Well, having succeeded in conserving this 2,000 square miles, we were asked a specific question by one of the tribal leaders.
Okay.
He said, okay, what are the big trees like in your place? And Rick and I looked at each other, and we were rather embarrassed to have to admit to them, terribly sorry, we lost our big trees many, many years ago. He said, why don't you go home and do something about that? And we said, yes. Why don't you come with us? So that was a bit of a surprise for everybody. And of course, that particular tribal chief couldn't travel because he'd never been out of his village and it would be too unsafe. But one of the young people who'd been listening very clearly, and two of the actors said, okay, we can come and help you. So we can travel. And over a few years, carefully engineering, we actually found a way to bring two of the actors over from the production that we'd done upriver. And they came and we did a national tour of Trees of Paradise, where we performed our story with the help of these two fabulous Papua New Guinea actors. And then we were in a place called Taunton in Somerset in the UK. And at the end of the play, one of the teachers put their hand up and said, I'm a teacher at one of the big schools. Would you mind coming in to visit our school? And we said, well, terribly, but we're on a tour. We're going off the day after tomorrow. And she said, well, come in tomorrow. She said, bring your rainforest into our school. We went, what a great title. So we did. We went in. We had a group of about 300 students. And again, we began to tell the story. And then we said, okay, this is the story, but now we need to know what your questions are. So we began to create a workshop that was called Bringing the Rainforest into Your School. So we did that while our two Papua New Guinea actors were with us for a month. But then they had to go back to their country, of course. And then what happened is that we'd created this workshop, which we then couldn't waste. So Rick and I, over probably about 8 years, and a team of our people, we trained some new people, and we created this Bringing the Rainforest into Your School, which went to probably about 10,000 young people in the UK over a period of time. Now, what's happened is one of my team members is about to knock on the door at about 3 o'clock.
Okay.
And he wants to bring in some of the old drums. He wants to pick them up. So this Bringing the Rainforest into Your School workshop is still happening today. We started this in 1993 and it's still going on. Yeah.
Great.
So quite successful.
No, it's very successful. Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. So finally, the final question to you is, while you and Rick raised awareness on saving the rainforest, you trained rather 10,000 students in the UK actually went through the workshop. What's the future looking like, Nigel, with so many multinational sharks operating across the world to destroy nature for profits? How do you see it?
Okay, this is a big challenge. Now, again, I think what's happening globally is that country by country, even though there's massive conflict everywhere, people are beginning to understand the value of nature. And as it happens, one of our contacts that we made way back in 1994 is a man called Simon Pentanu. Simon Pentanu, at the time, was the chief ombudsman of Papua New Guinea. And part of the combination that we did, we conserved rainforest in Papua New Guinea, but we also created new community woodlands and forest here in the UK. And we started in our own village. And Simon Pentanu, the chief ombudsman of Papua New Guinea at the time, in 1997, came over and he opened in a ceremony a new piece of land where we would be planting our own trees. So that was in 1997.
Right.
On June the 15th, this year, Simon Pentanu, who is now the Speaker in the Parliament in Bougainville, which is one of the Solomon Islands, who are looking to be their own independent nation now, is coming over as part of the 30-year celebration. So if we can impact the hearts and minds of individuals around the world, and one of the intentions, of course, is that if he is the Speaker of the Parliament in Papua New Guinea, then we will introduce him to the Speaker in the Parliament in UK. And it's something that we call global kinship. It's how do we find a way for diverse communities, diverse political situations to come together and to actually find a way to make sure that we're all taking care of this natural world full of its diversity.
Okay, Nigel, I think it's lovely talking to you on this podcast. I think your journey with you and Rick together going on a lovely tour over there, and your experiences are very, very rich, because if you look at it, you were not in UK, but you were basically in a rainforest talking to tribes over there who don't speak English, but the way you convinced them, the intention was right. And throughout the journey of the book, and I take it as a journey of the book because it was so picturesque. When I was reading it, it's as if I was actually going through the rainforest. So lovely writing there without question. You're saying something, Nigel.
No, I was just saying thank you very much, because I'm glad we were able to convey our journey that helped you go on your journey, because that's, of course, the best way that we can inspire people.
Absolutely. So to my audience, I think it's time for you guys to buy this book. I mean, we've been reading a lot of books, by global leaders and local leaders across the board, restricted to the corporate most of the time, because we actually work in different corporates. But this book would actually open yourself up, and I think open myself up to what is this. Rick and Nigel went into a rainforest. They had no preparation as such, but the kind of impact they have made, even after 30 years, you can actually go through it. And thanks a lot for your time, Nigel. I think you did give small stories in these 5 themes, which I'm sure would have impacted many of my listeners. And we'll put the link of the book as part of the podcast as such. And as you know, I do create a couple of teasers as such. So most likely sometime in May, we will release a podcast. And I think this is going to be a very different one compared to the other ones which I did. But lovely speaking to you again, Nigel, and looking forward to another burning topic very soon. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.